The MTN Radio Award-nominated Breakfast Rush with Nishal Sarwan.
Nearly 10 years after the capture of the Basic Education Department by unions was first exposed, none of the recommendations made by the ministerial task team appointed to investigate the sale of jobs have been implemented. In recent reports, both Corruption Watch and the Centre for Development and Enterprise have identified the failure to implement the recommendations, including the pressing of criminal charges by the national and provincial basic education departments. Now, joining us this morning is the chairperson of the Parents Association of KwaZulu-Natal, Brother Vee Gani. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Breakfast Rush on Radio Al-Ansar.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and thank you for having me, Nisha.
Vee, it's always a pleasure having you on the program, and it is always informative when you're on the show. Now, can you provide an overview of the current state of corruption in the education sector and the prevalence of jobs for sale scandals here in KwaZulu-Natal?
Where do you want me to start? Because there's so much of allegations in that respect. What happens is, there's a number of allegations that have been surfaced and are still surfacing. And these happens during the promotion post processes and so forth. The allegations are of a serious nature because it involves the allegations of interference by department officials, the very same people that are supposed to be guiding this process and educating, empowering, and uplifting the governing body. And then you find there's also, in a school internally, there's also corruption because there are allegations that principals will determine who gets the deputy principal position or the HOD position in a school. Then you've also got allegations of members of the governing body, allegations of corruption where they are involved or in cahoots with the principals or the departments of education officials and other parties to manipulate the promotion posts. But remember, when we're talking about corruption, we're talking about it in all aspects, including the financial part of things as well. So when you ask me the question about corruption, it is so widespread, and anybody who's in South Africa right now would have volumes to tell you about the corruption in all state or allegations of corruption in all state-owned enterprises and in businesses and in so forth. So it's becoming endemic. And as an association, I think we've been so inundated with complaints of allegations of interference that I'm not sure where it's going to stop. The problem that we have, and you rightfully, when you started off your intro, you mentioned it and you articulated it so well, because there is no consequence management for this. We complain and we complain and we complain, and those people or those alleged perpetrators are just let off the hook, moved laterally, removed from a process. There's no consequence action for any of that.
It seems to be the norm at SOEs. Vee. What are the most common forms of corruption in the education sector? And can you give us an indication of how this impacts the students, the teachers, and the overall quality of education?
Okay, so look, if you're going to, so let's start with just promotion posts, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to give that position or manipulate the position because there's a particular candidate that you have in mind, you're robbing the very same children at that school of quality education because you are now choosing a candidate. And by the way, and I must stress this at the beginning, and I've said this repeatedly, we don't have schools, and we're not going to, and schools should be allowed to make a choice. For candidacy, they need the best candidate, the best person for the job, irrespective of race, color, creed, religion, gender, so forth. There must be no discrimination. But when you start to say, look, we want only this candidate, or we're going to work it in such a way that this candidate gets it, you are disregarding all the other candidates that are there. Why should they apply? Of recent, I had another complaint that came through where a department official allegedly said to somebody that they need a person and a principal in the school of a particular race. Now, if you do that, aren't you then just ignoring all the other people that have applied of a different race? And why should they apply if already there's been a judgment made in terms of who's going to get that position? So when you speak about corruption, that's where it starts. Let's talk about finances. When you have a principal or when you have a governing body that is committing fraudulent transactions, that impacts on education in the school anyway. So we have these, we are inundated with these kind of complaints constantly. That there seems, and the department is really dragging its feet when it comes to these kind of allegations for investigation, and it's not speedy. We've had principals who we've reported that was involved in fraudulent transactions and activities. That investigations taken so long to come to finalization, but before that, those principals retire, resign, and then whatever losses you have is gone with that person.
Now, Vee, tell us.
Told the MEC that she needs to not allow anybody to exit the system if anybody is alleged to be involved in any fraudulent transactions or any misdemeanor for that kind.
Absolutely. Now, Vee, in your opinion, what should be the collective responsibility of all stakeholders? Now, this includes government, educational institutions, the public, in eradicating corruption from the education sector and, of course, the job markets as well.
Well, I think the most important thing to stress is if you see something, say something. More often than not, people see things, they know it's not right, but they're silent about it. That's one. The second thing is that if you're sitting as a member of a governing body, and I'm appealing to members of the governing body, get yourself acquainted, get yourself familiarized with the Schools Act, know what your rights are, know what your responsibilities are, so that anyone that's sitting there, whether it's a department official or otherwise, and tells you to do something that you know is not in the policy and is not correct, you would be able to stand there and you would be able to stand your ground with them. That's very important because we need to empower and educate our governing bodies. They seem to be influenced, manipulated, and intimidated by other people in terms of making decisions. And that involves unions, allegations of union involvement, allegations of principals, allegations of department officials. We need to eradicate that. The promotion post is controlled by the governing body, and it must be done in accordance with the legislation. So when you speak about that, that's what needs to happen. Governing bodies need to know what their financial and fiduciary duties are, because then they'll be able to practice it in a more transparent way. So they need to be empowered. And I'll get to my last point then, which is why we're calling the meeting, because there's so much of complaints, Nishad, that we thought, okay, let's just call a public meeting. Let's call everybody there.
Yes.
Let's try and see what the way forward is, because we've already attended to these problems with the MEC, but for some odd reason it tends to drag its feet. We need community mobilization. We need people to come back. They need to see a force. Then only they're going to change stuff. They're going to be forced to change stuff.
Absolutely. Now, Vee, I want to talk about the meeting that's been scheduled for tomorrow. But before we get to speaking about the meeting, I think it's important that we give people an understanding of when we say jobs for sale, we give people an understanding of the amounts of money that is changing hands under the table, behind the scenes, while nobody is looking. Is it just a few thousand rand to become a principal?
Okay. So the one allegation, and look, I don't have any evidence, but when a lot of people talk about it and people are talking in different circles, there must be some truth to something.
Okay.
But the last, they just mentioned one person, and they said this guy made 750,000 rand in the last promotion post.
Oh, my word. That's 750,000 rand.
What they tell me is that for the principal, the going rate is about 120,000. And if you want like a deputy principal, it's about 80 to 100,000.
Oh, man.
And if you want an HOD, it's about 60,000. That's what they're talking about.
These are scary numbers that you're mentioning at the moment, V. I suppose people will get more information if they do attend the meeting that's scheduled for tomorrow. Now, please give us information about this meeting.
Well, it's happening at the Chatsworth Youth Centre. That's in Chatsworth, near the Chatsworth Centre. I think everybody knows what it is. And it's happening at 2 o'clock tomorrow. And as I said, we are trying to educate, empower governing bodies. We are telling them what the things that they need to look out for, because those things are happening. We have complaints from schools, so we know what people are doing to try to manipulate processes. So we need to inform them, and so that when they sit in these processes and when they're sitting as a member of the governing body, then they're aware of what their rights are. And so that's the purpose of the meeting. Obviously, we also want to take a mandate from that meeting,
yes,
because if people feel differently and they bring in other issues that are of consequence, we need to take that up on their behalf as well. So that is what we're doing. And there are parents that are involved. There are educators that are involved. There's schools that are involved. There's governing bodies that are involved. And it's just the basic, schools are community and societal issues. So anybody in the communities that feel that they can lend support to what is happening is also welcome to the meeting, because the more people we have, and then the greater chance of us actually making a difference,
Absolutely.
There's power in numbers.
There we go. So just to recap for you listening in, the meeting's taking place tomorrow, inshallah, 2 p.m. at the Youth Centre in Chatsworth. So this is in the middle of Chatsworth. It's not too far away from the Chatsworth Centre itself. The Youth Centre in Chatsworth, 2 p.m. After the meeting, what's the expected plan of action to get the department, if not government, to deal with the issue speedily?
Well, I'll tell you this much. We've invited the MEC, the HOD, and Directorate to the meeting. Nobody's responded as yet. So if they don't come to the meeting, we go to them.
There we go. I like that. If they don't come to the meeting, then we go to them. Making sure the education sector has wheels that are well oiled and turning properly is very, very important for our future generations.
Absolutely.
And I think
Nishala, I want to just stress this point as well, because people have been asking, but why are you getting involved? What's happening? I've been doing this work and fighting and championing these causes in education for the past 27 years, and not without any pay whatsoever. So we've never charged anyone, any school, any person, any parent we've engaged for. Nothing at all. This is a completely reserviced. There's other members as well that also support us and also involved, and all of this done voluntarily. So there's no agenda to it. We're just worried about the fact that education is taking a different turn in KZN, as it is in the country, and it's being ruined. And it's being ruined by fraud and corruption and all of these things, and we want to put a stop to it.
Absolutely. V, I want to wish you and the team at the Parents Association of KZN all of the very best in your endeavours, and thank you for championing the cause for our future generations.
We try. Make dua for us, inshallah.
Ameen. V, take it easy. We'll chat again soon.
We will. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam. That was the chairperson of the Parents Association of KZN, Brother Vee Gani, giving us a little insight into a huge issue, an absolutely huge issue, corruption within the education sector. So in recent reports, both Corruption Watch and the Centre for Development and Enterprise have identified the failure of implementation of the recommendations, including the pressing of criminal charges by the national and provincial basic education departments. 10 years, nearly 10 years after the capture of the Basic Education Department by unions was first exposed, none of those recommendations have been made by the Ministerial Task Team that was appointed to investigate the sale of jobs and that have been implemented. Zero. So if you feel you want to know what's going on, if you have an issue that you want to bring up at the meeting, as well as you heard from the chairperson, attend the meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. The Chatsworth Youth Centre is right in the middle of Chatsworth, so it's not too far from the Chatsworth Centre. Attend that meeting. Listen to what's being said. Have your say as well. When we come back, we're telling you what's happening with our set of Vodacom stores.
This is TBR, your morning cup of Joe.